Alright, so just for clarification, everything that you will do and might do are at your own risk. I'm not liable for this, but in case you fuck up something, you can create a system restore point. You should do this on your C drive, go configure, and turn on system protection, okay, and create, and then a random name for it. And this is just in the case if you don't like the settings or some of the applications don't work on your system, you can go back to this. So we can start off with these. Windows PowerShell, run it as admin. Okay, so the first command you would do here, this I have pasted in the description. So what we want to do here is disable memory compression, because I'll make it just better. Alright, so the command how to disable that is the command that I have linked below. And after we have restarted the PC, you can check if this actually has turned to be false. We'll do some other optimizations before that. Okay, so now we're gonna do like primarily of the settings, and we're gonna tweak some of these settings here. So first, system tab. You should turn off all of these notifications here. You don't want these to pop up during your game, unless you want Discord messages or it to like highlight here as orange. But I prefer not having any notifications at all, because they will just distract you, even if you're not playing the game. Then in tablet mode, turn this off, never use tablet mode, and do not switch to tablet mode. And multitasking, I prefer not having this on. And shared experiences. If you're running a laptop or like a work laptop that has the same email, you can have this on. This might interfere with some of your settings that you have tweaked. Personally, I keep this on. I don't think it's a massive hindrance to my system. Just so like my settings and account preferences actually sync between devices. And if you don't use virtualize stuff, you turn off remote desktop. If you want the absolute peak performance, you can set your desktop background just as a plain color. It's gonna be the most amount of performance, but I don't think it's a massive hindrance. It doesn't eat any performance in my opinion, unless you're like on like some 20-year-old potato. And in colors, turn off transparency here, offline maps. And you shouldn't have any of these, and even if you do have, just delete all maps like this. App Store websites, turn all of this off. You can do this in here, but you can also do this from the task manager. I use Teams and OneDrive on this PC, so I'm gonna keep those on. And SteelSeries is just for the keyboard. I think game bar is somewhat of a placebo, and it also can induce a lot of stutters, so I would actually prefer to keep this off. Make sure none of these are on here. Then in the capture, turn all this off. Game mode. Personally, I like keeping this on. I don't know if it's a placebo. I haven't noticed any measurable difference having this on or off, but you can actually play around and see how your system performs without this on. It has been quite controversial whether it causes stutters or actually makes your games prioritize the resources. And for example, update scheduling might be impacted by this. Inside privacy, turn all this off, and you go to diagnostics and feedback. Go to this setting, only do required. You don't want to send as much data over the internet. It's gonna use more of your data, and your PC just works harder, and Microsoft steals your resources, so do the minimal amount that you can here, which is still a lot. Then you go inking and typing, turn this off. You can also do this here if you want, delete all diagnostic data. And feedback frequency, never. Location turn off. Clear location history. All of these locations off. Camera you can have on. If you happen to have a camera, you can select which programs can actually use it. And microphone, same thing. If you have a microphone, you can have this on. You can limit if you don't want, for example, Windows using them. Well, if you see, like, for example, Discord here or something, keep it on. Voice activation, never. Don't let Cortana listen to you. Notifications off. Account info, everything here off. Contacts off, you don't need that. Calendar off. Off. All of these settings, just click on off. So you're not using any of these. Background apps, don't want any of these stealing your resources. All of this off. Pretty much everything else here off. Videos, file systems. Because even if they need to access these, Windows still can. It just will need to ask you, for example. Okay, this is also very important. Go to ease of use. Go to keyboard. And please, for the love of God, turn this thing off. So, for example, when you're tab running, trying to manage your stamina on the bike, you don't get the sticky key sound and forcefully make you all tab. So turn all of this off. Security, inside update. You can download the latest updates when you have time. Then you pause the updates as long as you can, because you don't want all that dog shit running at the same time, or you don't want to forcefully update or have upload downloading as you're playing and streaming or recording. Go to delivery optimization, turn this off. Activation, you should have Windows 10 activated. I can link you a video down in the description. If you're still seeing the message there, you can activate Windows 10 for free. That's not that hard. Find my device off. For developers, I have Windows Insider program. I actually haven't found any use for this, but it's fine. Alright, so next up you're going to be typing in this PC and go to properties. Go to Advanced tab, go to Performance. In order to get all of this off, click for Best Performance, and we're gonna do Custom after that. Because, for example, the font on all of these, now it's not anti-aliased font, and we still want that, but the font is a little bit more readable than this old school stuff here. So that will be smooth edges on screen fonts, that on. And show thumbnails instead of icons. That's good. For example, if you're browsing your file manager, you can see the actual photos instead of it just being a photo file. So those two I would at least recommend keeping on. Then click on apply and go to advanced. Put processing, scheduling, priority to programs, as it probably should be by default. So this is, for example, quite important. For example, if you're running on like 16 gigabytes and you're running Hundo, for example, or like doing a really long categories, or having the game open for a long time where RAM starts actually like bleeding out if you run out of RAM, for example, or if you have a lot of apps open as well as GTA open. So paging file is just like additional backup where it will do the memory recalls from after your RAM is like fully overloaded. But it also might impact your VRAM also. So inside here you untick this box here. You click on no paging file set. Okay. Do the same for all of these here. And after that you should put it on your fastest SSD that you have. Preferably not your C drive, but because my C drive is an M.2, fastest one I have. So I put this on system managed size. Click set. Okay. It asks you to restart. That's fine. We'll restart later. Click on apply. Then OK. And OK. And we'll restart later. So next up, we'll choose what programs we want to run at the startup, or at least the programs themselves, not the services. But if you want to tweak further, you can also disable the services. Shift Ctrl S, go to startup, and then disable everything that you don't need here. I have a lot of stuff here. For example, if I wouldn't want OneDrive, I would disable this here, but I will want it. So after you have actually disabled everything that you don't need or run, You don't even need Steam itself unless you want to run it from the startup, which I don't. Every single time I boot up my PC, it runs Steam, so that's fine to have disabled. You have more issues if you disable the Steam service itself, so that's fine. And next up we go into ms config, if I could just write. Then we go to boot tab, and then here's my Windows. Then go inside advanced options, and inside here you click on number of processors, meaning how many threads you have on your CPU, and select the maximal number you have here. I have 16 threads and 8 cores, so 16 threads maximal. So it will actually boot up your PC faster, uses more resources, but that's fine. Click OK. And if you don't want to see the Windows icon, or for example, no graphical UI, for example, you boot, you can tick this box, but I don't mind having that. It doesn't make it that much slower. And in case you have trouble putting up your Windows, you should put this time as the minimal amount. It will retry to boot up your system faster instead of waiting, like for example 10 seconds. Then we click on apply, OK, and restart later. Then we go to audio, go to sounds, then we go playback, disable everything that you're not using right now. All of these can be disabled. For example, your monitor, you don't need the audio going from that unless you really want to. Then inside your actual audio device itself that you use, and inside advanced, personally I like using the highest available here. It doesn't eat that much more resources, and you will hear the sound better because it sounds more higher end, and overall I can sacrifice a little bit of resources for better audio output. And spatial sound off, then click on OK after you disable all these extra ones that you don't need. Also here, make sure you don't have the Windows sound, and also that Windows doesn't play sounds. Then we do edit power plan, go to change advanced power settings. You should have this one, ultimate performance. It has like everything set to the max. You might hear your fans a little bit louder when your Windows idles, but it's way more responsive. Highly recommend this. If you don't have it enabled, I'll link you the video down in the description how you can unlock this performance plan. But high performance almost does the same. If you want to make your custom one, you also can. The most important ones are processor management. So for example, it can use 100% of your CPU for the games, and also what kind of like background processes are scheduled, etc. These are custom preferences. For example, never put to sleep, because if you're rendering something, it will put your PC to sleep after a certain while of being idle. After you've done that, type run. Inside run, we go to ms, we go to regedit, click yes. Then once you're inside here, go down this registry. I have also linked this in the description. And once you're in here, you click on SystemProfile, and inside SystemProfile, network throttling index. So put here 7 Fs. Be very precise with this. This is the very sensitive stuff, so you don't want to fuck around with this. Have it as hexadecimal value also. Then system responsiveness, you want your system as smooth as possible, so you don't have any input delay. Set this value to 0. So it's pretty much, as soon as you move your mouse, it actually does the thing, instead of thinking about it, giving resources to the background processes, etc. Then double click system profile, go to tasks, and GPU priority data, because it's hexadecimal, so as far as I know it's a value from 1 to 8, and 8 is the highest one. So if, for example, Windows thinks that you're gonna need your GPU for this process, it will use as much of the GPU as it can, because it's allocated all of the GPU for that. But that's good. Priority 6, if it's not by default to 6. Then scheduling category. Yeah. Scheduling category, set this to high with H capitalized. Same with this one. So now you can actually exit out of this one. And we have to do this one, which is mouse settings. Cursor speed, this is custom. Put inside here pointers. Inside here, untick this box, and then we move this one 6 notches. So make sure that it's in the middle. Then we have the program that I have linked below called Windows Performance Tweaker. Install that. I linked it on the website. So here we are. I've already created a restore point, so no need to worry about that. Go to customization, go to performance, and put all of these to 1000 milliseconds. I'm going to disable all of these except smooth scrolling. And click on apply tweaks. Go to security and privacy, and you want to disable all of these, especially Cortana, web search and Edge and everything. All of these are just useless. And click on apply. Go to additional. Personally, I like enabling this. I've heard good things about it. Click on apply tweaks, and you click on close, and it might ask you for a restart. We'll restart later. So next up, you're going to clean temp. And next up, type in app data. %. You open this. This is pretty much the same thing, just roaming. Then go to app data, go to local, and then you want to delete all this, which I have quite a lot in here. Once you boot up your game, it will be a little bit slower on the first boot because it needs to recall all the resources and all the materials that are stored here temporarily in order to be re-accessed. There's a lot of other stuff that you might do with your PC, so it's good to once in a while delete them. For the ones that you cannot skip, so let's do this thing here. And for the ones that you cannot do, just click on skip. You go to this PC, click on the drive properties, click on tools optimization, and you can click on optimize. And then you can do error checking. There you go. And once it says it has found some issues, restart later, repair or next restart. Do this for all of your drives. cmd command prompt launches admin, and type in here cfc. You need to /scannow. You will find any sort of broken commands or any sort of unideal file pathings, etc. I will try to repair those. It's good to do this once in a while. Can help you to prevent crashes and other complications with your system. And then another repair command I have pasted down in below. And now it has done its thing, so we can close out of there. We can restart PC a little bit later on. Then go to NVIDIA. Get your newest drivers, whatever GPU you're running right now. Go to drivers. For example, GeForce RTX 20 series, 2060 Super. And here you can get the game ready driver. It doesn't really matter. Studio driver is a little bit more of a stable release, but game ready is also shouldn't experience any errors. But this is just if you want to also play the latest games. It has the most newest up-to-date drivers. It might be a while since you have done this, so you actually might gain some performance. And you can go to additional information if you want. You can read what they have changed. There's also websites for these. If you're actually looking for the best performance on your GPU, you can actually try to like Google the very best driver, because there's actual like few percentile differences between like 0.1 or 1% lows. So you actually should look for like what tweaks they have done on which GPUs. This one is not as detailed as I would have liked, but there's like websites that actually do compare what is the best one. For example, for GTA alone, you might be able to find that, but I have enough faith in NVIDIA that the newest one is going to perform the best. So I'll just download this here, save it wherever you want it, and let us do this thing. Same for AMD, honestly, but if you know how to install drivers. You also want to get a DDU, which is driver display uninstaller. Get the newest one. I think I have one. I have mine up to date, so I don't need to do it. This is just for like installing your drivers the most clean way as possible. You can restart your PC right here. And once we are inside here, good to go. We go to settings. We have to put into troubleshoot mode and recovery. And I continue recording from the phone, so you know what's up. So you go to advanced startup. Then you would click on troubleshoot, advanced options, and a startup settings, and you have to keep in mind it's number 4 for safe mode. You want to put in the safe mode so DDU can work the best that it can. Wait for it to load, and then click number 4 to put in the safe mode. Put in the pin code. It might look like a little different because the GPU driver is not itself engaged. Go to wherever you have your DDU setup. Mine is here. Click on DDU, run as admin. Wrong setting. Here, run as admin. Then you select, you can actually uninstall all of these, but I only have NVIDIA driver, so I click on clean and restart. And let us do its course, and after we have done that, it should put into regular mode of Windows, even though you still might have this resolution because you don't have any kind of driver installed. And as soon as it loads into Windows, you go straight to installing the actual driver instead of wait around, because Windows will itself try to engage some older basic driver to get the native resolution coming through, and you don't want any sort of Windows interference with it. After it has done that, clean the register, everything, it's gonna restart, prompt a restart, and then we can get back to installing the driver. So now we're here, go straight up, back to where you had your driver and installed the newer one, which was 555 for me. This is pretty much the exact same thing for AMD drivers and works on Windows 10 and 11. Click on OK, start the actual extract and installation. We'll do some additional tweaks that are not natively available inside the actual NVIDIA control panel. Here, you shouldn't need NVIDIA PhysX and GeForce Experience. Even though there's new GeForce Experience, I don't need that shit. Personally, I like having my system as minimal as I can. I don't need any sort of additional bloatware and dog shit. Click on OK, go to custom, and here, no audio driver, I don't need that. PhysX, useless. USB-C, don't have a USB-C, only graphics driver. Don't need anything else. You can click on this, but we already did a custom clean install with DDU, so no need for that. And now let's do this thing. Have it, you can click on close, that has finished. And then you go into this application that I have also linked below. You run this as admin, and please, for the love of God, do not touch anything else except your GPU. If you don't see supported modules MSI here for your GPU, do not put it on. But if you do have it, what this does will affect, for example, how the GPU will do the draw calls. For example, if it needs to render something, you should have this on. And undefined will Windows determine itself whether it's a high priority for the draw. And leaving this undefined is probably the best bet here. And click top right to apply. So now we can actually get into the real control panel settings tweaking. What you're gonna do is click on mouse second mouse button and go to control panel. Agree, continue. Go to this setting here, and for the rasterization, use the advanced 3D setting. If you're running the real potato, that you can't have any of this, it will look a little bit more jagged and less anti-aliased. You can use performance, but quality is fine. The manage 3D settings here, where everything is the most important thing. You can either set global settings, which I like to do, or you can actually tweak alone for GTA 5. Which, for example, if you want to run, for example, in GTA 5 anti-aliasing, you can actually have it here. Set it as custom, and you can actually set as global to use the application control, because in GTA 5 inside the engine this does not apply, so you can actually set it up inside here. For GTA 5, image scaling should be set to off. You should want to run at a native resolution, unless you want slightly more overly crisp, a little bit perhaps a jagged look. I personally don't like the way that it does it. It's like literally drawing your screen at a high resolution that is actually pixels on the screen itself. So for example, if you run other games, let's say you have 1440p monitor, but you cannot run at a high FPS, so you can set this to as a custom resolution inside the game and have image sharpening on, for example at like 40%. Run some custom resolution that is not 1440p, but GTA 5 doesn't like non-native resolution, so best thing to set this off. Ambient occlusion, set this to off. If you can afford it, you can set it to performance, but personally it's going to be competitive setting, just set it to off. And this traffic filtering, you can set this to application controlled and set GTA 5 separately. Anti-aliasing FXAA, very ancient technology, should be recommended off. Gamma correction on. Anti-aliasing transparency off. Background frames, set it to off. All cores, of course. Why would you not want this to have on? Just the driver default here. No need to mess around with this one. Low latency mode. Ultra is not as good as on, for example. Would recommend this turning this on. It's gonna optimize your drivers for gaming and best possible delivery of frames. And this will already preset the pre-rendered frames to 1, so it will always be the freshest frame possible instead of having like 5 frames ready to go. If you have NVIDIA Reflex here setting, you can set this to on. It's a really good option, and set it to enabled. I don't have it on my GPU. Max frame rate should be set to off. You can cap the FPS with RTSS. You have G-Sync monitor, have G-Sync compatible, because this will make your screen's refresh rate the same as your FPS. So even if you're running at, let's say, a little bit over 100 FPS, but your monitor is 144 Hz, this will actually make them sync, and it looks just a lot better because the screen is not tearing apart from the middle. If your GPU is extremely beefy and you're running at a very high refresh rate, you should probably turn this off, because this will induce a little bit of system delay into response times. So if you're pushing very high frame rates, or you're playing a lot of other competitive esports games like CS, for example, should turn this off, because your throughput will be already higher than the actual screen's refresh rate. So G-Sync won't do anything. In fact, it will just be a hindrance. So in order to do this, you go to setup G-Sync and enable G-Sync. Set this to off. Set the GPU rendering as the GPU. You don't want your for example, your APU doing the work. Here for the power management, you can go with the preferred maximum performance. It will make your idle a little bit louder and use a few more watts, like 20 watts more. I don't personally mind that, having it highest possible refresh rate, the highest of course. Shader cache size, whatever you can fork out here. This will, for example, determine, like inside GTA 5, there's so many goddamn resources that it has to recall and redraw and re-render. So for example, I'm not running that strict on my cache size, so I can set this to unlimited or 100 gigabytes. For example, this will not induce any lags or stutters. For example, going into a new area that I haven't been in before. For example, if you go to like through Paleto, and if you have already cleaned your shader cache, it will stutter for a while because it has to like re-render and redraw and recall everything that is inside the game folders. So set this to 100. Here you can set the anisotropic sample filtering to on. Thread optimization, I would set this to on. Triple buffering off, you don't want the frames to buffer multiple times, always off. Vertical sync off. Virtual pre-rendered frames 1, lowest possible that you can get here. If you don't use VR, set this to off. The last one set to auto. Then go to program settings, and we're doing this for GTA 5. You can do this for any other games that you might want. You can set the anisotropic filtering level. I like personally using 4x. It'll make the potholes pop out a little bit better. And here, depending on how much of a potato PC you have, you can set this to performance or high performance. But quality makes the sort of filtering of the textures, especially looking at a longer distance, it just looks clean and precise. Prefer maximum performance, you can set it to here if you want to have normal, and you can click on apply. Then we go change resolution. You go to your screen, because we install a new driver, go to your gaming monitor, and here put the highest possible refresh rate, which mine is 144, and now it shows here. Click on apply. You go to adjust desktop colors if you want stuff to pop out a little more. You can use digital vibrance, which is gonna look everything a little bit like overexposed, slightly too bright, but having this is just a competitive advantage. It gives a little bit more contrast for the shadows, like it increases saturation, etc. So I'm gonna go to like 70%. A little bit more contrast here. Gonna make everything a little bit yellowish and increases the saturation of the actual colors, and that's fine. You can tweak around with these, but you can also do inside the monitor settings themselves. And next up, we're gonna do nvidiaProfileInspector, which I have linked down below. Your profile inspector, launch as admin, click yes. And here we are, we can do global settings and in-game settings. We can do for GTA 5. And be very careful not to tweak anything that you do not want to touch, because these are also quite sensitive stuff, so be careful here please. Click here and export current profile and all the settings. In case you manage to fuck up something, save it here. And for FXAA here, set it to disallowed. And here's where the real tweaks of the matter are, what's gonna make your game look either better or worse, depending on if you want more FPS or visuals, which you should want the most possible of both, but in case you need to compromise, so a few tricks up your sleeve that you can do here. For example, you can make these settings slightly worse to actually make your game look a little bit blurrier, but it's gonna give you more FPS here. We're gonna start off with anisotropic mode application control. We're gonna set this to user defined. You can set this to 4x or 8x, whichever you prefer. You can go to 16 if you have a little bit more juice in your GPU. And from the actual way it's gonna render the stuff, you can set this to high performance. Threaded linear optimization, you can put this on. So here we are. Your game might look a little bit different depending on which values we have changed, but right now, for example, texture filtering was set to like I think 4x or 8x. So the asphalt looks extremely crisp, and looking at the very edge of, for example, this railing, it looks really jagged and sharp in a way. Same with the car, it looks kind of sharper than normally. And this pothole is way more visible in a way because it's high resolution. But if we set anisotropic filtering to like 2x, see how it looks. Now it has like less depth on it. Like if you look at it like this versus like, let's say 8x. I'm gonna set it to 8x. Now you can start almost to see a black line on the actual railing itself. It's like overly filtering the actual pothole itself on the very edge of it. But you can clearly see the depth of the actual pothole, that it's actual geometrical difference on it. Same with the pebbles on the very side there. So you can understand the geometry of the map a little bit better for brake boosting. So I like keeping this around 4. I think it's the best, like, best way to see would be like looking at it like this. Like, do they look jagged from like very far away? You can see the line scaling there a little bit changing. You go back to like, go like -3 instead. Now, when you look at it far away and it's swaying, you can see the actual lines themselves having way less anti-aliasing. Even at this distance, you can see the actual lines sort of like shaking. Same with this roof here, like this roof very edge, you can see the actual lines coming in and out. The anti-aliasing is very low there. As I previously mentioned, inside the control panel, texture filtering quality, if you set this to high quality or high performance. Try on high performance, for example. Now it's a little bit blurrier once again. GPU usage seems to be a little bit lower. Also really useful is to monitor your temps and block rates of your memory. Then also the VRAM, video memory, as well as, for example, how hot your GPU and CPU are running to make sure that you don't have any stutters. So now you can clearly see after we have restarted and applied some of the settings that now, for example, this pothole, it has way less texture on the pothole itself. Even though there's a little bit of this smoke or whatever going on right here. You can see how like non-sharp the edge now is. I'm kinda used to playing on this look, and the performance hit is not massive. But you can see how how hard it is to see. It almost looks like a decal on the road rather than a real geometrical difference. It looks almost like a sticker. Especially going at high speeds of travel, you couldn't see this pothole here existing. But if you would have it higher, it would have been easier to see from far away. But I do prefer this kind of look, where everything is sort of little smushy and blobby. Because, for example, the texture of the road, you can see how much less actual texture there is, and all of the surfaces look a little bit plain, which is fine by me. So I changed these ones a little bit high performance, and I actually have none of this on, and changed the anti-aliasing to 2x, and I'm happy with these settings that I have now here created. So these ones are for quite competitive and for lower end systems. If you are slightly beefier and kind of like the sort of sharpish look, you can try 4x or 8x to see the potholes a little bit better. Those are really useful for like brake boosting. One place where this is very beneficial is the bridge next to Leicester's factory, where the potholes are kind of hard to figure out how the geometry on them is shaped out. And you end up driving there many times with different vehicles. And also do make sure if you're adjusting the biax, do it for the DX instead of OGL. And check out some of the actual settings themselves. So for this, I prefer third person, free aim. And aiming sensitivity, there's no such thing as raw input. Separate setting themselves, so it doesn't matter. You can play around this as you feel like. And then here, you want to set this to as raw input, so there's less delay. Sensitivity here is to, you can determine this yourself. Smoothing scale, all the way off. Fine aim control, don't know what it does, keep this off. Preference, but off. Toggle, personally I wouldn't keep this on, or keep this off. First person, you don't want to use iron sights, use normal. This definitely off. The hindrance to have this on, off. These are preferences. This is, for example, if you swoop around with your mouse and then you continue driving, this will like reset aiming right down at the middle, but you always will be sort of using your mouse to scan around the environment, so these don't really matter. And inside key bindings, these are kind of preference. Most people break boost with this one here, or use this as the special ability. Rest are kind of preference. Some prefer F1 to F3 for character switches. Rest are kind of up to stock, I guess, or left to normal. Just do weapon select, something that really makes sense for you. For example, you shouldn't have the next weapon and previous weapon always appear whenever you're trying to select a weapon, so have these binds as something that you don't really use. Because you will always use these buttons to actually go on the right weapon itself. I have 1 through 5, or 1 through 6 actually, and T for sniper. I remember some other runner used this too. For next weapon, roll up, because that's fine. You can also use previous weapon, but this had a conflict with me, so I have next. Here, everything kind of left the stock. I fly with a keyboard and mouse, so I have a little bit of custom settings here. Just make sure that when there's a L bind, that you have a separate bind for it too. For aircraft, I think there was a problem with that. Submersibles, quite simple. Cell phone, kind of normal. These don't matter unless you do play that. Then inside audio, this kind of preference. Music off, dialogue off. I mean, there's no boost above the radio level. Radio off, headphones. Then for camera, these definitely on. Height, high of course. Because if you have it less low, it's gonna look disgusting. Like, how would you want to have it like this, where you can barely see above your hood? Doesn't really make sense to me. So you want to have this on high, because now you can, by default, without moving your mouse, camera goes higher for that. So that's what just makes sense to me naturally. First person, auto level, camera, all this off, and field of view, this is very important. If you have the lowest possible field of view, which means like your FOV, how far you see in first person, this is dumb. You want to see all the detail around you. You don't have to have it zoomed in. It's better to see your peripheral vision to see if there's like traffic coming next to you or something. So this to the highest possible level, so you see more fidelity. It's not even that insane of a difference. Then I would prefer to keep all of this off, because whenever you're doing a action that is kinda awkward in first person, it'll just automatically swap you out of it. Radar on, HUD on, target simple. I know why you would use a actual crosshair. Yep, GPS right on, brightness all the way to the brightest. Because you want to see all of the shadows, even though this might make your game look a little bit more gray. I think it's worthwhile. Save zone size, you can tweak this. Personally, I have it the highest way, all the way in the corners. But obviously, it will be a little bit of a competitive advantage. But it might block the screen a little bit more from the crucial area that you want to see in the center. So like, for example, your phone calls and where, for example, the prompts go. I don't mind having it all the way in the corner, but obviously this will be less eye movement if it wouldn't be all the way in the corners. Fine for me. Subtitles off. Shouldn't have subtitles on. It's gonna make you slower. The inside graphics, just kinda these settings here, native resolution. Do not run on DX11. It had to be 10.1 or 10. I can't remember which one. I'll double check this. 10 or 10.1. Full screen, of course, full screen. Native resolution. Unless you want to tweak this and have the risk of crashes. Rest of them, MSA off. That's way too costly for your FPS. Worthwhile VSync off, of course, off. You want the fastest possible. And pause game on focus loss should be off, so you can alt tab. Density lowest. There's enough cars to go around. Variability highest. I've actually thought about hypothetically having a little bit more density. Might benefit, for example, coming out of the hospital, which have a little bit more cars, but obviously this will make it way harder on some of the drives to go fast because there's so much more traffic. So lowest, I guess, is the play distance scaling. It's high. And now for like texture quality, would prefer having it high. The indoor textures, for example, and the actual road itself, a bit more high resolution. Can't really showcase this without actually restarting the game. Rest of these normal and MSA off. Shadow soft. Like the shadow softness is like fine, you can see the character right there, it's a little messy and blobby. But if it's sharp, it's gonna take up more resources. For example, looking at fences, the anti-aliasing might fuck up here. Like that shadow is pretty disgusting, but having it on soft is fine. Rest of this is off and normal. Graphic setting, all of this off. Voice chat. Doesn't really matter. Disable. You're gonna need to have phone alerts on, stats alerts on, useful for like Epsilon or a few other categories like Hundo. You need to know where your stamina is at, and no delay. This editor can be off. These days we use autosave, so autosave can be on. And that's pretty much it. Nothing too crazy about the actual game itself. There's a few minor tweaks you can play around with, but I think these work quite well for many systems that are not the lowest end possible. There's so many more infinite tweaks that you can do on your PC. For example, overclocking and making sure that your temperatures don't run too high. But this should get you started. I'm going to show you a few additional things that are outside of the game. Okay, so next up, really important thing, depending on what kind of monitor you're rocking, I'm rocking a 144 Hz screen, and it's from ViewSonic. And here, you should set your profile accordingly. You should change the VAST time as fast as possible, because that's literally gonna make your screen faster. Highest available refresh. This is black calibration. This brightness preference, I like having it at the maximum setting. Then color, you can change your color on the actual screen itself. Contrast, saturation at highest. Gamma, depending on like how black the blacks are, etc. Can also, like, if you tweak it the wrong way, it's gonna make everything look kind of grayish. And I have like black, then I have Then I have blue screen filtering. You can have that on blue light filter. But yeah, depending on what kind of monitor settings you're rocking, you should always turn this to the highest possible. Then you can have color temperature, the gamma and black stabilization there. No eco mode, make sure that your screen can use the most amount of power as possible. It's good to have on. Automatic shut off, you can have that off if you want. No rest mode. But yeah, just max out your monitor, especially on the refresh rate as well as the timing of the actual screen itself. That is important. Then a little bit about ergonomics. Have your wrist on either the table, like fully extended like this, so you can reach your keyboard fully. The wrist not being in a particular angle, because you're playing hours and hours, you shouldn't have your keyboard fully tilted. Just have it in a very neutral position where your wrist can rest. I also happen to have a wrist rest here, so it's very comfortable to reach. And then the elbow like leaning on the table, so it's natural. But if you're running a chair, you just have the chair sort of like, so if you have your keyboard a little bit closer, you can use your wrist rest here. It will be the same level as the table. That would be the most ideal. Then for the mouse, it would be ideal if the mouse would have side buttons for like powering. You can have additional ones for DPI changes, etc. I have my DPI change in the bottom. That's very useful. Go from 1400 to like 2000 DPI. You can tweak those in the actual settings themselves. Then for the mouse wire, for ergonomics, it would be important that the mouse wire doesn't hang from the table, like it would actually be attached to somewhere and have enough free play, so you're not restricted in your movement. That would be very ideal. Then for the screen itself, it would be very good to have your screen as close to you as you could, like actual eye level. So it's like your eyes would go at the same angle to the screen as you're looking at it from the center. So a little bit from the angle, side attack. I do prefer not having the actual monitor stand, so you have more extra room for like something in the middle to eat. Actual chair itself, it's like whatever chair you might have available. I recommend for like longer sessions having some kind of neck pillow, and then you could also have like a lumbar pillow to actually support your lower back for the longer gaming sessions. And for ergonomics, like other stuff would be having your like chair all the way up to neutral position at 90 degrees, having your legs all the way in and legs also standing at a 90 degree. Obviously it is personal preference whether you want to have a little bit keyboard angle or how much space you have available on your desk, but whatever works for you. For the keyboard itself, I would obviously recommend, if you have 60% keyboard or TKL at least, numpad is just the most useless thing ever. My way of flying is using tab, shift and Q and E for like the actual rotation, and then also swivel backwards on the plane is on the mouse, and tilt forwards is on tab. So it's very simple if you want to actually use full keyboard and mouse for gaming on GTA 5. But yeah, very simple stuff, and yeah, hopefully enjoyed. Oh yeah, and one last thing I forgot to mention about optimizing your gear. Depending on what kind of software you're rocking, you can perhaps customize your mouse settings and mouse binds a little bit better. As I previously mentioned, like the DPI switch, also for your keyboard, you can change the actuation, like how fast they will trigger. So this is actually extremely important. If you have a newer keyboard where this is possible, setting the break boost breaking time of S, which is the case for me, as low as possible, 0.1 milliseconds of actuation. So meaning when I let go of S, it like lets go way faster, so whenever I break boost, it multiplies the speed by more because I'm breaking less on top of that. I'm not a huge fan of using a rapid trigger. Rapid trigger could be used for like spacebar or enter, meaning as soon as you start lifting off, it goes to 0. As soon as you start repressing it, it goes back on.